Less than 2 years ago, I made a video called Cooper Flagg is the future of the NBA. And now, he's the National Player of the Year as a freshman, the unanimous #1 overall pick in the upcoming draft, and is currently in the Final Four competing for a national championship. It's safe to say Cooper Flagg has definitely lived up to the hype, and he might be even better than you even realize. He's to this day leading one of the best teams in the entire country in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals. There's a reason everyone thought he was going to be the first overall pick before he even played a single game of college basketball. He's one of the most complete top overall picks we've seen in a while, especially coming out of college. Cooper's a 6'9" wing that can honestly do a bit of everything, and that's what we've continued to see during his March Madness run. Throughout the 4 games he's played so far, he's averaged 19.5 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 blocks. He's the only player in the tournament that ranks top 10 in points, rebounds, and assists. Plus, only 2 players have ever averaged at least 15, 7, and 5 heading into the Final Four. That would be Cooper Flagg and Grant Hill back in 1994. To be doing that as a freshman in his very first tournament is really impressive, and he's also been pretty efficient as well. He's shooting 45% from the field and 43% from 3. He's been doing even more than you can even ask for. And you have to remember that Cooper is still probably dealing with that ankle injury that took him completely out of the ACC tournament. He got hurt on March 13th, but was able to suit up on the 21st just in time for March Madness. And if you know anything about ankle injuries, those don't heal up right away. They can linger for weeks to even months. So for him to not only return, but to play at a high level shows how good he really is. That game he had in the Sweet 16 against Arizona was one of the best games he's had all season. Cooper finished that night with 30 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 blocks. He was absolutely dominant on both sides of the ball. His head coach John Shire literally said it was one of the best tournament performances he's ever been a part of. He was the first player in Duke history to have 35-5 in a tournament and the first player to do it with 1 or fewer turnovers since 1985. And the craziest part is, he did all of that in the flow of the game. He wasn't really going out of his way to force anything. But this is something we've seen from him all season. Against Wake Forest, he had 28 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, and 3 blocks. That's actually insane, and again, he did it while being incredibly efficient. He shot 63% from the field, 50% from 3, and only had a single turnover. No 18-year-old should be that dominant on both sides of the ball. Or how about his game against Virginia Tech, where he ended with 24 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, and a block. Or even his game against California, where he had 27 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals. He's been putting up monster stat lines on an almost game-to-game basis, and you can't talk about his season as a whole without bringing up that performance against Notre Dame. I already talked about this one in my last video about Cooper Flagg, but it's worth bringing up again. He finished that game with a season-high 42 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists. Not only that, but he shot 79% from the field, 67% from 3, and 94% from the free throw line. It was the best game of his entire college season, and it was right there people started taking him more serious than they already were. He broke the ACC freshman scoring record and was the first Duke player to score 40 or more points since J.J. Redick, who did it back in 2006. Even Zion's career high was only 35. Just an absolutely insane performance. There are very few freshmen in the history of college basketball that were able to put up those types of numbers. Not only is he outperforming his freshman expectations, but he's doing it while being younger than a typical freshman. In a world where players are staying in high school as long as they can, Cooper did the exact opposite and has been extremely successful. I know I've said he's a very complete player a few different times, but let me show you why I say that, starting with his offense. On the season, he's averaged 19 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 4 assists while shooting 48% total and 37% from 3. That's already impressive, but to be doing that in the Duke system is even more impressive. One of his best traits by far is his ability to drive to the hoop. Once he's by the defender, it's very difficult to stop him from finishing at the rim. He can finish around defenders and he can finish through defenders. The way he can change his shot mid-air or just score despite dealing with a lot of contact is what makes him so good. And when you combine that with the fact that he can pass the ball surprisingly well, it makes him even more difficult to stop. Cooper's actually like a really good passer. He showed he can pass the ball pretty well when he was in high school, but he's easily an above average passer. It's definitely one of the things that has surprised me the most about him. He can initiate the offense, play either side of the pick and roll, and can even pass when he has his back to the basket. So say you are able to stop him from scoring on the drive, there's still a really good chance he finds an open teammate. And to make him that much scarier on offense, he can also shoot threes at a pretty high clip. 37% is great, and although he isn't shooting a ton of them a game, he's shooting enough to make defenders have to be cautious at all times. But he's not just that, he's someone that you don't want shooting at all, because the threes that he does take typically go in. Does he have some flaws within those skills? Of course, he's only 18, but for the most part, he plays years above his age. The only real weakness that I would point out is his ball handling. Yes, I know, surprising, the 18-year-old 6'9" forward doesn't have the greatest handle at times. I wouldn't even say he's bad at it, he just sometimes has a loose handle, which has led to a decent amount of his turnovers. That's really my only critique, but that's not where his game ends. He's equally impressive on defense. Cooper has 15 different games with 2 or more blocks, and also 15 different games with 2 or more steals. Not only is he able to step up on the perimeter, but he's able to also get down in the paint and defend the bigs. Saying he can guard 1 through 5 is not a crazy statement. There's been games where he's had to do that. I mean, his defense is one of the biggest things that blew him up in the first place. I know some of you remember those 10 block games he had during EYBL, but you can't bring up his defense without talking about his rebounding. Cooper is a really physical player, and it's why he's so dominant in the paint on both ends. And it's one of the big reasons I think he'll be just fine as he moves on to the NBA. And if Duke can somehow win the national championship, then that will make his rookie season that much more historic. Every single team in this year's Final Four is a 1 seed, and this is the first time it's happened since 2008. They have some really tough competition, and they're a super young team going up against some really tough teams that have a lot more experience. But if we're being honest, regardless of what happens, it's still been a very successful season for him. A National Player of the Year award, a Final Four appearance, and one of the best seasons in Duke history is more than anyone could have asked for going into the season. I hope you understand how insane him winning National Player of the Year is. Cooper now joins Zion Williamson, Anthony Davis, and Kevin Durant as the only freshman to ever win the award. It's awesome to see players get extremely hyped up during their high school days and actually live up to that hype in college. Even Kevin Love said that Cooper is more talented than he ever was, and that if he can stay healthy, then he will have a far better career. He even said that he could have a statue by the time he's finished. That's some really high praise from a guy that's most likely a future Hall of Famer. This is the same kid that was 17 years old going against the best the NBA has to offer over the summer. You don't get invited to stuff like that at his age unless you're truly something special. And at this point, the big question is which team is going to get that first overall pick. Utah was the first team that really entered the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes and currently have the worst record in the entire NBA. Although Washington is right there behind them and literally just had the second overall pick in last year's draft. Charlotte definitely has a chance, along with teams like the Pelicans, Sixers, Nets, Raptors, and even Spurs, which would absolutely break the NBA. It would be cooler to see him play for some teams over others, but either way, I think he's going to fit in just fine no matter where he goes. His playstyle can be plugged in anywhere, and he impacts the game in so many different ways that he'll make his impact felt regardless. But either way, I'm excited to see where his career goes from here. But let me know what you think about Cooper Flagg in the comments, and please leave a like on the video to support the channel. Also, subscribe if you're new for more basketball videos just like this one.